When my wife declared a seven-figure scratch-off jackpot was hers alone, she forgot I negotiate contracts for a living. By the time cameras flashed at the claim center, the clock had already started on a clause she insisted we include before our wedding. You're watching Revenge Files. Subscribe for a new twist daily. My name is Jason Hartwell, and I'm 38 years old. I run vendor contracts for a hospitality group that supplies linens and kitchen equipment to hotels off International Drive in Orlando, Florida. Numbers calm me. Definitions protect me. In 2019, when I married a woman I loved more than I understood, I asked for a prenup not because I planned to leave, but because I planned everything. We signed it 5 days before the ceremony. October 7th, 2019, in a glass-walled conference room in Winter Park after our lawyer slid the final pages across a table and clicked a pin against the wood. Her name is Lauren. Back then she was 29, a Pilates instructor who posted sunrise photos from Lake Eola and handmade candle tutorials. I was steady money, $92,400 a year plus a modest bonus. And she was airy light, the kind that makes you think you've underlived your life. We rented a 2-bedroom on Church Street and pretended the sunrail was Paris. The prenup became our grown-up ritual. She wanted her brand, Pierce and Pine, to be separate property if it ever exploded. I wanted clarity on everything else: retirement accounts, the old Tacoma I kept for weekend runs to Home Depot, and anything the law calls a windfall. My parents lost a quiet war in Ohio over a surprise inheritance, and I remembered the burn. I asked for a sentence that would never make headlines, but would save me quietly if the world ever threw us a curveball. Our lawyer drafted a clause that defined winnings as any prize or gaming proceeds either of us received during the marriage, to be split equally when received, no matter whose name was on the ticket, form, or check. 3 years later, the curveball landed. On the night of October 26, 2024, unseasonably cool air spilled over Orlando. Lauren texted that she was out with her studio friends after a glow ride around Lake Eola. Just before 10:30 that night, our joint bank account showed a $30 debit at the Publix on East Central Boulevard. A few minutes later, her story lit up with a boomerang of bright tickets fanned like playing cards. I didn't comb through any of that in the moment. She tiptoed in after midnight, glitter on her cheeks like rumors. She kissed the air above my forehead and slid into bed with the tension of someone hiding a fire inside a paper bag. By noon the next day, the flames appeared. Lauren stood at the kitchen island holding a single ticket so stiffly I thought she might crack it in half. "Don't freak out," she said. "I think I hit it. The big one." She had bought a $30 scratch-off because her friend claimed odds pop in October. She scratched it in the morning light and watched the Florida lottery app explode in confetti, then balk at the claim. It told her to make an appointment. She did. She booked for mid-November at Florida Lottery Headquarters, 250 Marriott Drive, Tallahassee. I poured coffee and waited for the sentence people want to say when they forget the world isn't only theirs. "This is mine," she said. "It's my ticket, my luck, my name." I looked at the sink, at the soft mound of suds that rose like a tiny mountain range next to a spatula. When I turned back, she'd already opened her laptop. She started sketching a plan that did not include we. To say we argued understates it and overdramatizes it at once. She wasn't angry. She was sparkling with possession. She said she'd transfer something reasonable after taxes. I said we'd read what we already wrote. She told me to let her have this one. Then she shut her laptop and walked to the bedroom with a lightweight dance that felt like a goodbye. On Monday morning, October 28th, 2024, crawling on I-4 past the Kirkman exit, I called the lawyer who drafted our prenup, Marissa Delgado. She answered with the kind of calm that sounds like a ruler laid gently on a desk. "Jason," she said, "tell me the facts you can pin down." I recited times, amounts, the Publix debit, and the new distance opening between us. She listened. Then she said, "I remember your file. Open your agreement to the clause you added about winnings. Read it slowly." I pulled up the PDF that lives in a folder too neatly named for the mess it was about to contain. The clause was plain. Winnings during the marriage, including lottery or gaming proceeds, would be treated as marital property and divided equally upon receipt, regardless of whose name appeared on any ticket or claim form. Lauren had insisted we protect her brand. I had insisted we define windfalls. We both signed. We both initialed every page. The notary stamped. We smiled. And then we went off to our rehearsal dinner as if we hadn't just written a weatherproof line into our future. Marissa's plan was short and boring, the kind that works. Preserve records. Don't antagonize. If Lauren refused to treat the payout as marital property, file for declaratory relief asking a court to enforce the agreement. She reminded me that judges appreciate definitions. At home, Lauren acted like a storm that chooses which streets to flood. She moved money around for studio supplies. I found a UPS receipt for a packet addressed to the lottery headquarters in Tallahassee. When I asked, she told me plainly, "I'm doing what winners do." I kept my voice still. "Then we'll do what signers do." The day she drove to Tallahassee, she left just before dawn in our crossover, a white travel tumbler in the cup holder and Route 27 lit like a runway. She texted from a parking lot ringed with palmettos. A selfie followed a couple of hours later, her smile wide, a stylized check barely in frame. The lottery site posted the press photo that afternoon, a ceremonial check for $2,500,000, her name in block letters, a representative in a navy blazer. The caption said she had chosen the one-time lump sum. The math was quiet but heavy. $1,780,000 before withholding, federal taxes clipped at 24%, no state income tax in Florida. Within days, I learned the net seven figures had landed in a new account with her name only. We didn't ask for divorce. We asked to enforce a sentence we both chose when we were still planning a seating chart. On November 18, 2024, Marissa filed a petition in the Orange County Family Court asking the judge to declare the winnings clause controlling and to freeze the funds until the court could decide. We attached the prenup, the bank records showing the $30 ticket purchase, screenshots of the Instagram story with the timestamp, the appointment email, and the lottery press photo announcing the prize. No theatrics, just receipts. Lauren hired a lawyer named Colin Traeger. He filed a response arguing that the ticket was hers alone because she physically scratched it and used a wallet app tied to her personal card. In a footnote that read more like a shrug, he called the winnings clause ambiguous and overbroad. On December 6, 2024, we stood under fluorescent lights at the Orange County Courthouse for 25 North Orange Avenue, waiting for a family courtroom to open. The hallway smelled faintly of paper and lemon cleaner. Lauren wore a cream blazer and a confidence I recognized from the day she held the ticket at our kitchen island. She didn't look at me. A man in a gray polo next to us read a pamphlet about parenting classes. Our judge, the Honorable Denise R. Barrow, took the bench just after 9. She was precise without being cold, the kind of judge who circles a word with her voice. Marissa spoke first with the steadiness of someone who understands that law is storytelling with rules. She told the judge there was a signed agreement. The agreement defined winnings. The facts fit the definition, and we sought only equal division when funds were received. Then she paused, and without flourish said, "Your Honor, the parties chose the word regardless." That word does work. Colin argued ambiguity. He said the clause didn't expressly mention scratch-off tickets and that Lauren's use of a personal wallet app made the funds separate. He held up some article he'd printed that morning about separate property. The judge did not look at it long. I watched Lauren's face change for the first time when the judge asked a question I had waited weeks to hear. "Where, in this clause," she said, pinching the stapled pages with her left hand, "is the limitation you urge me to find?" Colin started again with personal purchase, but the judge lifted one finger and read aloud. Winnings would be divided equally regardless of whose name appeared on the ticket or claim form. She looked up. "That is awfully plain." Marissa slid copies of our records to the clerk and summarized what they showed. The $30 purchase on the night in question, the social post minutes later with the tickets visible, the appointment booking, the press photo, the subsequent wire of the lump sum net to a sole account. Then she added a detail judges always want to know: timing. The purchase, the claim, and the payout all occurred during the marriage. The judge turned to Lauren. "Ma'am, I appreciate that you feel this was your luck, but you signed a very clear agreement 5 days before your wedding." Then she granted a temporary freeze of transfers and set an evidentiary hearing for January 21, 2025, back in the same courtroom. She warned that moving money around in the interim would be viewed seriously. At home, The air went thin. Lauren slept in the guest room and stacked Pilates mats between the beds like draft stoppers. She answered texts in a different room. On New Year's Eve, she posted fireworks from someone else's patio. The caption said, "2025 is mine." I think it was meant to hurt. Instead, it framed the year with a truth neither of us could edit. The evidentiary hearing felt like a last turn before a highway merges back into one lane. On January 21st, 2025, I parked in the Jefferson Street garage, walked past security, and took the elevator with a bailiff who smelled like coffee. In court, Colin tried a new angle. He argued the word winnings should be read to mean awards from competitions, not games of chance. Judge Barrow asked him to reread the clause. There it was again in plain ink. Winnings included lottery or gaming proceeds, acquired by either party during the marriage, divided equally upon receipt. She asked Lauren a single question that cut like a seam ripper. "Ms. Hartwell, was the claim appointment you booked in November based on a ticket you scratched on October 26th? Lauren looked at the table and said, "Yes." Marissa walked through the math. The advertised top prize was $2,500,000. The lump sum Florida offered was $1,780,000. With mandatory federal withholding at 24%, the net wired to Lauren's account was $1,352,800. Our request was unromantic. Divide the net equally under the prenup, reserve jurisdiction for any additional federal tax due in April, and award reasonable fees for having to enforce a clause both parties signed. Colin objected to fees. Judge Barrow looked at the clock, then at us, and then she ruled. She found the prenup valid, the winnings clause unambiguous, the fund's marital property, and the division equal. She ordered half of the net, $676, for 100, transferred within 10 business days to be disbursed to me upon receipt. She reserved the right to adjust if federal taxes nudged the final numbers at filing. Then she added fees against Lauren, $8,750, due to the necessity of enforcement. The written order landed before lunch. I paid $1 a page for a certified copy at the clerk's window and slid it into a red folder I had labeled weeks earlier. When I walked out, the winter sun felt fake the way Florida winters do. I pressed my palm against the cold rail and thought about the sentence that saved me. A single definition, quiet and faithful, had held while everything else performed. Lauren didn't rage. She did small, tight things. She unfollowed me on Instagram. She moved her toothbrush back to the primary bath with a dignity that was almost kind. She sent the transfer on a Friday afternoon, and Marissa's office wired the same amount to my account before the close of business. The next morning, I used $24,812 to pay off the Tacoma and $3,960 to clear a lingering dental care card. I moved $350,000 into a ladder of 6-month treasuries around 5%, and set aside $140,000 as a safety cushion with a nickname I knew was less than clever, Breathe. A week later, we started counseling twice. She picked a therapist in Winter Park who kept succulents in the window and asked us to hold hands even when we didn't want to. I picked a man on Colonial Drive who had a muted diploma and a talent for stillness. We lasted 4 sessions together and 7 more apart. In March, Lauren filed for dissolution of marriage, and I did not contest. We mediated on April 3rd and signed a settlement that made ordinary sense. She kept her studio and her soul accounts. I kept my 401k and the Tacoma. The judge signed the final judgment on April 21st, 2025. We left by separate doors into a spring afternoon that smelled faintly of orange blossoms and paper. Friends asked me what hurt the most. It wasn't the money. It was the moment the person who used to split tacos with me on Tuesday nights at 10 and Taco looked at me like I was the government and she was owed a refund. Money thickens the air, definitions thin it again. Our prenup had no romance, only relief. The honest kind that arrives when you write down how you will treat each other if either of you becomes very lucky or very scared. On June 1st, 2025, just after 7 in the morning, I sat at a small table at Craft and Common, a coffee shop on Robinson Street, and opened a spreadsheet titled July-December. Cell C3 read, Mortgage Down Payment Fund, and next to it was $100,000. In D9, I wrote, Do not be petty. I closed my laptop and walked outside. where early heat already pooled on the sidewalk. Orlando hummed, indifferent and fine. A week later, a yellow envelope arrived from the court with a final fee ledger for $101 in filing fees, a service charge for the summons, a small charge for certified copies, and a stamped "paid" at the bottom. I filed it behind the order in the red folder and slid it next to a thin white binder where the prenup lived, pages worn soft where my thumbs had pressed them. If you need the receipts, they exist. The bank statement from October shows the $30 purchase at Publix. The social post is time-stamped the same night. The lottery site still displays the ceremonial photo and the headline calling her an Orlando winner. None of it sings, all of it stands. People hear revenge and picture fire. Mine was a definition performed. In public, in black ink, by a judge who read what we wrote aloud. Lauren didn't apologize, exactly. She texted on July 4th with a photo of fireworks over Lake Eola and the message, "We were good once." I wished her well and left it there. I still drive past that Publix and think about the curveball night. The neon sign blinks against Florida dusk, and someone always walks out with a bag of groceries and a little rectangle of hope. Maybe they'll win. Maybe they'll go home and split a reheated rotisserie chicken and scroll through shows and decide, quietly, before the confetti, the way they will treat each other if luck ever leans too hard on one side of the table. If I could hand them anything, it would be a one-page insert, a single sentence circled in blue. Winnings means what it sounds like. Decide together what it will mean for you. Because in my city, on my street, with my name typed under hers in a document we signed 5 days before we danced downtown, the definition held. It was not romantic. It was not loud. It was enough. Real love never fears the fine print. Only greed does. Thanks for watching. See you in the next story.